last video, when we looked at karyotypes, which I said wrong in the last video. I left out a Y in my spelling, and I left out a Y in my pronunciation, so I taught you entirely wrong. Sorry, sometimes I don't know how to read. The word for your future reference is karyotype. With a Y, which actually makes more sense if you think about it, because it sounds like carry a type, the type that you carry. And it is helping us to, well, scientists, it doesn't really help me. It helps scientists determine where types of traits are so that they can reference them in their research. So we said that in a particular pair of chromosomes, this is a beautiful, beautiful pair of chromosomes. Let's say they're number 14. We can go reference this karyotype and say, what is the eye color? And you will have two possible eye colors. Turns out there's a name for those traits that correspond to each other. They are called alleles. I'm going to erase karyotype. Alleles, and that is actually how you say that. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on it. No, do quote me. It's an allele. So these alleles are a spot which corresponds to a matching spot on a homologous chromosome pair that will tell you about a trait about yourself or about whoever's karyotype that you're looking at. The way that these alleles work and the way that they determine what kind of trait you have is that you will have a trait, and let's just use eye color for example. You will have a dad, and he has brown eyes, and you'll have a mom. Wait, a different mom than that. Dad broke up with that one, and he married this one with blue eyes. All right, so your two alleles that you will have will be one blue allele and one brown allele. It won't be that color in real life, but it will code for that within your genetic code in your DNA. Anyway, blue eye allele, brown eye allele. And together, we still don't really know what color eye you would have, right? Could have blue, could have brown, because you have both of them in your karyotype. However, it turns out that there are dominant and there are recessive alleles. So the dominant allele is the one that you will have then as your trait, the one that will show up and be used in your genes. So if we have a brown-eyed dad and a blue-eyed mom, we know that brown eyes are the dominant allele and blue eyes are the recessive allele. So we then would know that their baby, you, would have brown eyes. But hold on, I hear you saying, what if both of my parents, my dad decided he liked his old girlfriend and now he's back with her, and they both have brown eyes, but, oh gosh, I lost here. Don't worry. I have blue eyes. This is the actual scenario of baby me. I have blue eyes and both my parents have brown eyes. So how did it happen, you might ask? Or maybe in your situation, these are your parents. One has brown, one has blue, and you do have brown eyes. And you're like, everything tracks. But then your sister has blue eyes. How did that happen? How do we have two different color eyes? Who's making these decisions? Well, I'm glad you asked, because this is where our understanding of meiosis comes into play. If you have two alleles in your chromosomes, and you have one blue and one brown, it stands to reason that each of your parents also has 2 alleles in their chromosomes. So even if your dad had brown eyes, he could have blue eye allele hidden inside of his chromosomes. So the way that the hidden blue eye allele might get to you, we're going to follow it through meiosis all the way from living its life in interphase till it gets to you. And let's see how you could possibly get his hidden blue eye chromosome. You should have already read the chapter, so you should already know this. But just a refresher. So I'm not going to draw the chromosome every time. I'm going to shorten that. I'm going to shorten it into, here's the chromosome living its life in interphase. In this spot, we've got a blue eye allele. A matching chromosome, the homologous pair to that chromosome, living its life in interphase. This spot has a brown chromosome. 2 different alleles. When we're talking about alleles and writing them out on paper, we write the dominant allele, which in this case is brown eyes, as a capital letter. So I'm going to write it as a capital B. And the recessive allele, which in this case is blue eyes, is always the lowercase letter. So I'm going to write it as a lowercase b. And instead of drawing this every time, all these chromosomes, I'm just going to use these letters. I have faith in your smarts, and I believe that you can follow along. So remember, brown eyes, capital B, blue eyes, lowercase b. So hanging out in interphase is 1 brown eye allele and 1 blue eye allele. Before it gets ready to reproduce, in this case, it's going to copy itself at the centromere and create a matching sister chromatid. Right? So we've got brown eyes with a matching brown eyes, blue eyes with a matching blue eyes. And they're just hanging out. It's just interphase. They're living their life, but they're getting ready to start replicating and reproducing. So the first phase comes along. The first phase is prophase, and some little spindles are going to take everything and start to move it all around and get it lined up for metaphase 1. Everything's going to be connected by little spindles and stuck in the middle like so. And you all already know this because there were no questions last week when we talked about this. So that's going to pull these brown-eyed alleles attached to the chromosomes up to one side, and the blue-eyed allele attached to the chromosomes down to the other side. Then that's anaphase. In telophase, it's going to close it up into its own new little cell, and then it's going to do everything all over again. In prophase 2, it's going to attach everything with little spindles, get everything ready. Metaphase 2, everything's going to line up at the center. In anaphase, it's going to start to rip this chromosome in half. So before it took the whole chromosome, each one had a different allele. Now it's going to take that chromosome and rip that in half. So one half is going to be pulled to this side, and one half is going to be pulled to this side. And the same thing will happen up here. One half's pulled there, one half's pulled there. And then in telophase 2, it's going to close it into its own cell. And voila! We now have 4 separate gametes which may be passed to you. So even if our dad had brown eyes, he had a dominant brown allele and a recessive blue allele, so he showed up with brown eyes, he might pass the blue allele to you. And the exact same thing might happen in the mom. Even though she had a dominant brown, she may have had a recessive blue, and she may have gone through all of these same phases and ended up with just a blue to pass on to you. And if you have 2 recessive alleles, so you don't have any brown allele passed to you, no dominant allele passed to you, then you have no choice but to show the recessive allele. So your eyes would be blue. Some things that we learned in here that we didn't even know we were learning through this process is the word genotype. Genotype. Genotype refers to the combination of your 2 alleles. So your dad's genotype would have been big B for a dominant brown, little b for a recessive blue. Your mom's genotype, if she had blue eyes, would be little b, because she had to have 2 recessive blues for it to show up. That is your genotype. Your phenotype that's the way your genotype shows up. So your phenotype, your dad's phenotype, would be brown eyes. And your mom's phenotype, if this was her genotype, would be blue eyes. We also discussed a monohybrid cross. So mono means one, hybrid is like a combination. So a monohybrid cross is looking at the cross between 2 people but only focusing on one trait. So we looked at 2 people, a mom and a dad, but we only looked at their one trait, eye color. That is a monohybrid cross. A dihybrid cross is something that we could look at, and it is still focusing on a cross between 2 things, but it's now going to look at 2 di, meaning 2 traits. So 2 traits from 2 people is a dihybrid cross. And when we want to look at these crosses and the way that they interact with each other and figure out, oh, might the kid have blue eyes or might the kid have brown eyes? We can do it a lot easier than writing out all of the steps of meiosis. We can make what's called a Punnett square. The way that that works, so we'll look at the same monohybrid cross we did a second ago. We'll say we have a dad with brown eyes, and we know that his genotype is big B, brown eyes, dominant, little b, blue eyes, recessive. And the mom, she had blue eyes, so she had little b, recessive blue eyes, and recessive blue eyes. And we put them into this table, the Punnett square, and we look at what combinations are possible. Here in this box, we could have a big B, brown eyes, and a little b. In this box, we could have a big B and a little b. In this box, we got little b little b. This box, little b, little b. What do we find out from that? This box represents all of the possible eyes that their kids could have. So their one kid, if they got these alleles from their parents, or they had these options of alleles, they might get these alleles, or these alleles, or these alleles, or these alleles. What do those alleles mean to us? Well, we know if there's a dominant allele in the set, it's going to present the phenotype of the dominant allele. So we know that the kid has a 1 in 4 chance of having brown eyes. But wait, there's another one. We have a dominant allele. It has to present that in its phenotype. So there's actually a 2 out of 4 chance that he has brown eyes. These don't have the brown allele in them. It's only going to show this recessive blue eye allele. So there's also a 2 out of 4 chance that they have blue eyes. So we know that if the dad with brown eyes has this genotype and the mom with blue eyes has this genotype, their child has a 50% chance of having blue eyes and a 50% chance of having brown eyes. Let's look at how that would change if the mom and the dad both had brown eyes, but both were carriers of blue eyes. Being a carrier, when you don't have that phenotype, means that you've got that hidden allele inside. So the dad with brown eyes is a carrier for blue eyes, and the mom with brown eyes is a carrier for blue eyes. What are the chances their kid has blue eyes? In this simulation, this has a dominant brown eye, this has a dominant brown eye, this has a dominant brown eye. 3 out of 4 chances to have brown eyes, and only 1 doesn't have it. 1 out of 4 chances to have blue eyes, which is a 75% chance to have brown and only a 25% chance to have blue.